Welcome back to Softball Speakeasy, Episode 2, Season 3. My name is Raine Wilson. I'm a former Duke softball player turned analyst and broadcaster.
And my name is Kelly Torres, a former Duke softball player, current pro softball player, and GA at Clemson.
Look, the goal is to give you the major headlines, just talk ball, and hopefully give an insight what it's like to play softball at the highest level. Welcome to Softball Speakeasy. That was shot live. Can you guys tell?
What up, Softball Speakeasy fam?
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another week of Softball Speakeasy. And look, it is Monday night. It is 9:35 p.m. It is an hour after we started trying to record this podcast. As you may see, we ran into some technical difficulties with the camera, with the audio, with all that stuff. But Kelly, we're here. We made it. Opening weekend is done. All right. And we're just going to jump right into it. Not only because it's 9:30 and we both have to get up at probably 5 a.m., but because there's a lot to talk about. Let's start with your Clemson Tigers. This past weekend was the first weekend you were on the sidelines as a coach. And it was a weekend that Clemson fans aren't used to having. Wasn't necessarily bad, but I'm going to run through the scores real quick of the opening weekend for Clemson, and then we'll discuss kind of what went down from your perspective, Kelly. So game one took a loss to Ole Miss 3-2. Game two beat Kansas 4-3. Game three, which I'm really curious to hear your perspective of, losing to FAU 6-2 at FAU. Game four, beating Georgia State. Game five, finishing the weekend strong with a run rule victory over Missouri State. So the team is clearly adjusting to the but the fact that those seniors moved on last year, Valerie Cagle, Millie Thompson, Mackenzie Clark, amongst many others. What is your overall take from the weekend that Clemson had in Florida?
Raine, you hit it on the spot. Like, those key players that left last year, we're filling it in. And if you look at our lineup, it has a lot of freshmen. If you look at the infield, it's a very young infield. And how I'm seeing it is we have all the pieces, but we're still trying to put that puzzle together. And that's what the beginning of the season's for, right? We're trying out new things, trying people at different positions, moving around that lineup. And we had success. And so it's finding that and staying consistent with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head with it being early, trying to figure things out, put the pieces together. We'll talk more about this later, but the goal is not to be good in February. The goal is to be good in May. But I do want to ask about that FAU loss because looking at the stats, looking at the box score, 10 runners left on base, 3 errors defensively.
Yeah.
Was that one of those games where the score really doesn't show how close of a game, how tight of a game that was?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, FAU, I want to tip my cap off to them because they're a hell of a team. They're putting together a great run. I mean, they had it last year, and it seems like they haven't missed a step this year. But we left off people on bases, I think, every inning.
Yeah.
And that right there is the key to win games. It's timely hitting. Once you get someone on, you score them. And we were missing that last piece. We were getting them on. We're missing that run in. You know, maybe it's a little gap shot, a hit up the 3-4 hole. I think that's also what the younger players are going to have to learn. You're not trying to hit a home run every time you're going up to bat. A little ground ball to the right side is just as effective. And so I think as the season goes on, that's what we're going to learn the most is just timely hitting and when to take the big swings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm excited to see this team progress because you mentioned there was a lot of bright spots. We saw 5 arms in the circle. Of course, you mentioned Brooke McCubbin. She was fantastic last year, led the way with 11 and third innings pitched. But I want to talk about offensively too. I love watching Alex Brown play. I love watching her hit.
Yeah.
She's incredible, can do so many things. But I do want to talk about Julia Noller. She is one of the ones that you called out as she's going to have a big year. 2 home runs on the weekend. What stood out to you the most, whether it was in the circle or offensively for Clemson this weekend?
Well, I mean, our pitching staff, leans on each other so well.
It's a
You know,
staff.
there's no
Mhm.
hate, there's no, "I wanna be the best, I wanna be the number 1." I mean, like, those girls, Duncan, Chuck, Cintron, Reese, Cubby, they're all working like a family, and
Mhm.
when you have that culture within the pitching staff, that's when you learn how to work together and work on each other's strengths and when to pick up on someone's weakness, so I'm excited for that staff to get after it. Hitting wise, I said it earlier, Noller is a dog. Brownie, I call her Brownie, Alex Brown,
I
a
love it.
dog. Macy Cintron, a dog. Like, we have some great things coming together, and it's not even like they have it figured out yet, but they have that mentality of like, "You're not gonna get me out."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
just that alone will get you far.
Do wanna touch on the what you mentioned about the pitching staff being a staff, and
Mhm,
honestly, in my opinion, that's really hard to have happen. I think a lot of
mhm,
staffs, pitching staffs really want that, but realistically, like, pitchers in the best way, have ego. And sometimes that can flip on the other side of the coin where it's they want to be the one. And so to hear that your staff at Clemson is really embodying that, that's going to pay dividends, especially with where the game is going, with
yep,
it being more of a staff approach. I do want to talk about where Clemson heads next. So, of course, the first 5 games, battle tested, Ole Miss, solid program, FAU, and not to, to gloss over the others, but next week at Clearwater, that's when really Clemson will be very much battle tested. I want to mention the schedule: Missouri, Auburn, Kentucky, UCF, and Ohio State. So, what is the message to this team? Of course, it's we're recording this on Monday, so they've already played Furman on Tuesday. But what
mhm.
is the message going into Clearwater this weekend after the opening weekend that they had?
Well, Rittman said it well in the beginning of the season in the fall,
Hmm.
and he was like, "A lot of people are not gonna believe in you guys. You lost, you lost the Clark, you lost the Cagle, you lost all those big people. And our motto this year is to just bring it on. Yeah, we have
Hmm.
Missouri. Yeah, we have Auburn, Kentucky, so forth, so on. Bring it on. Like Clemson is going to be Clemson no matter who steps on the field. And I think FAU was a great test. It opened our eyes to what we need to work on. And so coming into Clearwater, I'm glad that we have these big names next because I
Hmm.
think it really gives the freshmen and just the vibe of the team a little reassurance of, okay, this is who we are. This is what we need to work on. Now let's go attack these next teams.
Absolutely, and being on the big stage of Clearwater will only pay dividends for this young Clemson team to get that feeling because you grow up as a high school player and those are the teams. Clemson is a team you want to be on and play for,
Mm-hmm.
but those are the teams you want. That's who you watch as a young girl is those
Yep.
teams. So that's exciting. So they'll go to Clearwater. Well, another team was in Clearwater this weekend, and it was our
Mm-hmm.
alma mater, Duke. The same record, 3-2 on the weekend. I'll mention the scores and the schedule, but started off really strong against Penn State, won 7-0, then beat Mississippi State 8-0, lost to Missouri 10-3, which we will discuss
Mm.
here in just a moment. Then lost on the same day to Northwestern 4-1, and then was able to beat Kentucky for the final game of the weekend. But want to talk about Missouri. We talked about it last week, a super regional rematch, an intense series last year, and a really intense one this year. Cassidy Kurt in the circle, up 3-1 in the sixth. And then after that, it was the Mizzou show. It was the Tiger show. 9 runs for Mizzou, but at the end of the game, the score was 10-3 from Mizzou and Duke. But 12 hits each for each team. 12 left on base for Duke. Only 4 left on base for Missouri.
Mm.
So we kind of texted about this, about what happened in that game. And I'm curious. I know we've kind of talked about it, but I want to hear your thoughts in the sixth inning because I think we might have actually different opinions on this. Up three
Okay.
to one in the sixth,
Mm-hmm.
Cassidy gets taken out. What's your thought on that as her being sort of the ace for Duke so far this year and likely for the rest of the season? What's your thought on her getting taken out and then following Missouri scoring those 9 runs?
Yeah. Well, I think teams have different swings. I
Yeah.
mean, everyone's individual, of course, at the end of the day, but you can kind of tell the hitting coaching's philosophy just on the
Yeah.
way that people are swinging the bat. And Missouri, when I played them last year, it was kind of obvious they struggled with rise balls. Just they have this big loopy, not loopy, but they hinge, they get into their backside and they go under that. I mean, that launch angle is pretty high, you know? So
Yeah.
it comes to no surprise that they struggle off Cassidy Curd, who is a rise ball pitcher, very
Mhm.
effective. And so, yeah, I mean, leave Cassidy in, let her finish, but who knows if she was tired from the last game, if they wanted to play her for the next game, like, you have
Mhm.
you have to make sure her arm's okay. It's the beginning of the season. Like I said, like you said, not me, but May comes, you want Cassidy to be very healthy, and it's a tough loss. I think the other pitchers on staff, Danny, um, everyone else, just it would be a great experience for them to come in and then close that door, and I think that's what
Yeah.
Coach Young wants. It's like put them in those positions and get that feel, that vibe, whatever it is that they need to figure out. So when it comes later in the season, Cassidy doesn't need to go 7 innings. Cassidy
Mhm.
can go 3, 4, 5, and then they don't miss a beat when another pitcher comes in to relieve her.
Man, you're just speaking words like right out of my skull right here. I could not agree more. It's first off, coaching is really hard. If
Mhm.
Danny had gone in and things had gone differently, then I think we wouldn't be talking about this. We would be talking
Nope.
about a different game. But credit Mizzou because I think you're spot on. I think that's something that as fans and as spectators of the sport often goes unnoticed is matchups. Like that's the
Mhm.
piece that it's like it's not only Cassidy's amazing, but Cassidy versus Mizzou and the types of swings they have, they're way more hinged. They're preset, way more hinged.
Mhm.
And as the game went on, they made adjustments, but to your point, not natural, not as natural for them in their swing planes. And so that's a piece. The second piece that I could not agree with more is and I wrote this on our notes for today is it the panic button or is it part of the plan? It's part of the plan. In my guesses would be that Coach Young knows that Cassidy's going to be, she's going to carry a lot of weight in the circle. She's just so good. And so she has to put these other pitchers and I don't even want to say these other pitchers as in like as if Danny and Sophie and the other pitchers on that staff aren't formidable, incredible pitchers.
Mhm.
They're going to be just fine. But Cass has had the experience in the circle in those big games. And so it's not a matter of like what are like oh no we have to put them in no it's we need to give them that experience those moments that stress because if they
Yep.
do that now if in February they get those reps and they get comfortable and they find the rhythm then like you said in May it will pay dividends because we've learned we just talked about this you cannot rely on one arm and so I think you lose to Mizzou now in hopes of beating them twice in May in a super and so
Hell
I
yeah.
think and I also think that it's a really good I know those girls in the locker or those women in the locker room do not like losing 2 games, especially in the fashion that they did, but man, does it really just re-engage you with the goal and re-engage and you know what? We went to the World Series last year. That doesn't mean anything this year, right? And
Mm-mm.
so they end up losing to Northwestern that same day and then bounced back for the Kentucky win. But want to just hit on a few of the standouts offensively, defensively, and of course in the circle. But Amina Vega, I mean, she's she's just so good. I mean, wow. Her
I
swing, just
know.
her approach, you can't beat her twice. You rarely do, but batted 500 on the weekend. KK Mathis, the transfer coming from JMU, also had a great weekend as well. And then up and down, I mean, they batted 357 as a team. Pitching wise, Cass was really, really solid, 1.5 ERA, and then only gave up 6 walks, which I think is huge as a
Mhm.
staff. Duke only gave
Yeah.
up 6 walks. And then defensively, I gotta hit on the young woman you mentioned last week, Kyrie Rodriguez, looked incredible
Mhm.
behind the plate. An ode to the just graduated Kelly Torres. So, looking ahead, Kelly, I want to ask what your thoughts are against UF. UF, in a lot of polls,
Mm.
#1 in the country.
Yeah.
Duke goes to Florida. They play Boston College, they play Providence, and then Binghamton, but they play 2 games against UF.
Mhm.
What do you think the message is for Duke against UF in this big, big showdown this weekend?
Yeah. I mean, UF 6-0 on the weekend. We didn't really talk about them, but
Yeah.
offensively, lights out. Even their slappers were hitting home runs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think Coach Young's coming up to the team and like, "Hey, I'm not losing to my daughter. So
Yeah.
we're picking it up." This is kind of it means a little more. It
Yeah.
means a little more. I don't think coach is gonna wanna lose, and I don't think Layla is talking to UF and be like, "Oh, we're playing my mom." Like, she wants to beat her mom. So,
Absolutely.
I think they're both gonna come out with a very, very competitive game, and it might not be the big hits, but it's gonna be scrappy, and no matter who's hitting, who's playing. It's gonna be very, very intense. I think that's a
Mhm.
game to watch this week.
Me too. I'm really excited to see the offensive game plan for both teams too.
Mhm.
I'm really curious to see how Florida matches up with Cass. If we see Cass in one or two, and one thing I also want to mention about to pitch Cass in that sixth or not to, and who to throw is we also are not privy to any injury, any like kind of
Mhm.
aches and pains or things that these athletes are dealing with. And that's something that is so often overlooked is the possibility that someone is on a pitch count or dealing with other things. So that's something I just want to note. But yeah, very excited to see that matchup. I cannot wait. There were a ton of other amazing matchups this past weekend that I want to get into.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, so I'll just read out a few, and Kelly, we'll talk about a couple. But Arizona bulldozes Alabama 9-1. I called Arizona last year in their regional in Fayetteville against Arkansas. Offense was insane then, still looks to be pretty darn good now. Nebraska, Jordy Bahl, that crew beats Tennessee. Texas Tech beats Nebraska. I want to talk about that game.
Mhm.
Notre Dame walks off Missouri. They hadn't won a game that weekend, then they walk off Missouri. Mississippi State, which Duke beat 8-0, beats Texas Tech 3-1. Who beat Nebraska? Who beat Tennessee? I mean, it's just like parody all
Yes.
over the place. And then last one I'll mention is Louisiana Tech beats Oklahoma State. Florida State beats Oklahoma State after they lose to Oklahoma State. Just all kinds of craziness. Which of those matchups sticks out to you the most?
All of them. Can I say all of them?
Yeah.
I mean, you hit on Arizona, who run ruled Alabama, but then loses to Washington. Who knows? You talk about FSU losing to Oklahoma State, but then run ruling Oklahoma State in the second game. I mean, we didn't even touch on Oklahoma. Oklahoma had 2 games going extra innings.
Uh-huh.
How crazy, and against Long Beach State and San Diego State.
Uh-huh.
And, I mean, we didn't even touch on the biggest game yet, which is Texas Tech and Nebraska, which we have MLB Network. The fact that it was aired on MLB Network in a preseason atmosphere,
Mhm.
I am excited to where this sport is going because that's big. The
Yeah.
fact that it was on MLB Network.
Yeah, no, I mean, MLB Network covered Duke versus Missouri, covered like I was like, wow, this is amazing. They did last year too, but to see the kind of coverage across the board has been amazing. Let's talk about Texas Tech versus Nebraska. So for folks
Mhm.
who maybe are new to softball, in fact, I got a couple texts from folks who don't really follow softball. This matchup here, gosh, there's so much behind it. I don't even know how we can possibly like summarize this. Texas Tech, there's a young woman named Nija Canady, best arm in the country, one of the best arms,
Mhm.
probably 1A, 1B here, number one in the country, transfers from Stanford to Texas Tech, reportedly $1 million in NIL. Massive
Mhm.
move to Texas Tech. Jordy Bahl, probably the second best pitcher, if not right up there with Nija, number one, went to Oklahoma, won a national championship at Oklahoma, transferred to Nebraska. Don't know what that NIL deal looked like. Sure, it didn't look bad. So these two players that transferred
Yep.
to these separate schools, Jordy Bahl tore her ACL last year, back this year. Nija Canady, Jordy Bahl, Texas Tech versus Nebraska. I mean, immediately put these two teams in the conversation for top 15, top 10 preseason. But guess what? Nija Canady was not in the circle. She was in the
Yeah.
box. She was hitting.
Mhm.
And oh, did she hit? She hit a 3-run
Bomb.
bomb,
Mhm.
bomb off Jordy Ball and ended up propelling them to a comeback victory.
Yep.
What do you make of the decision not to pitch Nija? Not only to not pitch her, but to have her in the box And then
Mhm.
what do you make of this world where Nija hits the 3-run bomb? Pitchers who rake. What's your opinion on this?
You know, it makes me think because neither Jordy Bahl or Nija hit at the previous schools that they were at. At Stanford and at Oklahoma, they were not hitters. They come to these programs and they're hitting bombs because I think Jordy also hit a home
Mhm.
run.
Mhm. Oh,
If
yeah.
I'm Which is
A
crazy,
bomb.
you know, to not hit for a whole year to come in and now you're in the lineup and you're just hitting bombs. That's just something to think about, like, why at their previous schools, who knows? We don't know the culture, we don't know the vibe, but that these 2 ladies were just POs
Right.
because they are outstanding athletes, outstanding, and to your point of why didn't they pitch Nyjah? I mean, that throws off the whole game plan. I'm sure
Mhm.
Nebraska spent months on film, months on their machine, months on visualizing Nyjah in the
Yep.
circle for them to come up there and it's a completely different person. I mean, that throws off your whole game plan. That's
Mhm.
in your head. I think Texas Tech was definitely playing the mind games and
Yeah.
it showed.
Yeah, Coach Glasgow at Texas Tech in a postgame interview gave such a wonderful answer. I loved it. And when asked, why not pitch Nija there? They end up winning the game. So it's like he looks like a genius, which I mean, clearly he's got something going right. I think
Mhm.
very highly of him as a coach. But he said, I wanted the message to my team to be, we are a team. We need to win as a team. We cannot rely on one player. That we are not one player. And he said, I could take the criticism if we were to lose. And he's like, also, I wanted Nija to get a chance to hit. I've been working with her all preseason long, all fall, and as a hitter. And he's like, I just want her to focus on hitting. Oh my gosh. And that begs the question. I didn't write this down, but pitchers only. Put yourself as a
Mhm.
head coach. I think that's a I mean, that's a really hard decision. Do you put Nija in a position where likely going to get, run for if you have someone on the bench that would work, but also you want to keep her in the game. There's a lot there. The decision to have her in the lineup and Jordy and the potential to get hurt. Where do you stand on the pitcher only argument versus pitching and hitting?
I think it's very, very impressive when you can do both and you can do
Mhm.
both very well. And I
Mhm.
think those are the type of players that, oh, when you're a pitcher, you understand the mindset of a pitcher. So when you're up to bat, you kind of have an extra edge. And you see it with Valerie Cagle. You saw it with Claire Davidson, although she didn't continue pitching. Rachel Garcia. I mean, you can count out a lot of great two-way players,
Mhm.
and it's you understand the pitching mentality and almost like I wonder if they can even see something out the hand differently that most hitters can't, or even their foot placement just because they know pitching so well. I
Mhm.
think it can only help them. I do understand the injury piece,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, are you a dog? That's what I go back to. Are you a dog? And I think Nija and Jordy both have proven that they are that I'm not gonna say it, B word.
Yes, they both are. They're both dogs. Like, I mean,
Dogs.
dogs. Um,
They're not
what
dogs,
is
they're dogs.
dog what is that from? Is that from something?
I have no idea.
Dogs. It's from something. It's like a clip of this interview guy, and he's like, That guy? Dog." Like, he talks like that. Anyway, I digress. I agree, they're dogs. Nija and Jordy both. I think on that point, you make a great point. It's really hard to do, and it's one
Mhm.
thing to do it as a youth player, but it's another thing to do it in college when you only have a certain amount of hours and you have to
Yep.
dedicate a ton of time to everything. It's really hard. I think
Mhm.
for a head coach, it probably depends on the player. If
Mhm.
I'm a head coach, I'm looking at how they hit in games that they don't pitch, how they pitch in games that they do hit, how much we're relying on them throughout the season. Like, I'm looking at all those things and also just get a read of the athlete of, do they
Yep.
want to? Like,
Yeah.
do they like not worrying? Does it take their mind off pitching? Does it take their mind off hitting too much? All those things. So I think it's really interesting, and I love watching pitchers hit.
Yeah.
And even though they don't practice that much hitting, typically they somehow find a way to rake. And it's really, as a hitter, I remember just being like, "Are you kidding me? Like, you don't even
Right.
practice and you like hit
I
a home run.
know.
What's the
Y
problem here?"
You hit on a good point of the mentality, just like, are you strong enough? Are you mentally tough enough to,
Mhm.
if you have a bad outing pitching and you're hitting
Yeah.
the next inning, can you erase and flush it and be locked in the next part of the game? You know, a lot of pitchers, I mean, of course, you care and there's emotion. I mean, I'm sure if I was a pitcher and I just had a terrible inning, I'd be down in the dugout.
Yeah.
But now you have to flip it and become the hitter. And
Yeah.
so it takes a very special person to do that, and I think Clemson has one of those in the makings. I don't wanna
Uh-oh.
jinx, but Macy Cintron is a
She got it?
dog. Let's
Dog.
just say it. Let's just say it. She's a dog.
We should find the video to play it. Dog. Yeah, no, I think it's awesome to see these young women who have that in them
Mhm.
because as a pitcher, I mean, I saw a video and actually, let's play this game. I saw a video, I think it was Nebraska or Wisconsin, and the question to the athletes on the team was, "What's the hardest position to play?" And to my
Mm.
surprise, the answers were all over the board. So I wanna ask you, what is the hardest position to play in softball, in your opinion?
In my opinion, ugh, I think pitcher. I think the
Yeah.
pitching piece of the game is very difficult, and I think it takes a very strong mentally person to do that. And there's times, I mean, I wear it. I wear my emotions on my sleeve. Every teammate I've had knows that. And I think if I was a pitcher, my mentality would have had to have changed very early on in my game to be a very successful pitcher because I've been playing like that since I was a kid,
Yeah.
like the yelling, the aggressiveness, all the things the catcher can do,
Yeah.
like the catcher can be that person. As a pitcher, you kinda have to be stoic, stone cold. I
Yes.
mean, you can let out the emotion and yell when you're excited, but when things aren't going your way, you can't be like, "F this, F that." Like, as a catcher, like, I'm talking smack out there in
Yeah.
my mask and no one can tell.
Right.
So, I think maybe not the physical part, I think training, I mean, it's difficult, all positions are difficult, but I think the mentality piece of being a pitcher is what makes pitching the most difficult position in the game.
I couldn't agree more. I actually thought, I mean, a lot of the like, half the answers were it was either catcher or pitcher, and a
Mhm.
lot of folks, I think from that clip, if I remember correctly, the pitchers were saying catchers, catchers were like, "Pitchers for sure," and then some were like, "No, I'm a pitcher and it's hardest," and the catchers were like, "I'm a catcher." I think catching is the most in a lot of ways physically grueling
Mhm.
because you're like the backstop, like you're the
Wall.
net. You're literally treated
Yes.
like a
You're a
object.
human. You're literally a human, like, just wall of just
Dude,
getting pelted left and right by a ball, a bat, a body, like, no matter what it is, you're getting pelted by it.
literally, dude, I have a great story from my freshman year. So do you know view flexes? Do you know what I'm talking about? The like big
No.
circular things with
Oh,
the
yes,
thing in
yes,
the
yes.
middle?
Oh my
Okay, so
gosh.
there was this
PTSD.
literally. So there was this of course honestly I want to say trend in college softball where it's like
Mhm.
pay 5 grand and have these nets cuz then it like visually it helps you whatever.
The
There might have been
tunnels.
science behind it. I don't know. But one thing I do know is catchers were not supposed to be catching live when there was one net. My freshman year, my poor friend and I, she's also a freshman, we're catching. There's 3 nets. 3 nets. Okay. Like one, two, three, like right up close to us. And there's
Yes.
wires in the middle where they're aiming.
Yes.
Anytime it like tipped the wire, it's either hitting you in the leg, hitting you with the arm, whatever. So my
Ricochet.
friend is up first and she gets hit in the head like 4 times because you can't catch it. And she's like concussed and like dizzy and like kind of falls back.
Oh.
And I'm not gonna say who it was. It was a he at JMU. He was like, "All right, Rain, suit up." I'm like, "Absolutely not."
Oh.
She's literally about to throw up in the dugout because she has a concussion. And that was like, and then just like the weighted balls, 70 miles per hour run throughs from 15 feet away. I'm like, what am I doing here? And that's how catchers
No.
are treated. But the other side of the coin there, right, is like you get to have the passion, energy, and like the control, I would say, of the
Mhm.
game. Whereas pitchers, same with you, Kel, as a kid, Oh my gosh, I pitched in baseball a little bit, but I was a head case, absolute head case. Those pitchers who are very stoic, even after they give up a bomb or whatever, are
Oh no.
incredible. And when I see
Mhm.
a pitcher like really lose it, I'm like, oh wow. And then I'm like, if I were pitching, I'd be like crying in the circle or like throw like just like foaming out the mouth, so angry. So that is definitely the
Yeah.
hardest position. Comment below what you all think the hardest position is. I'm curious,
Mhm.
but yeah, I'm trying to think of the other hardest positions if it's not pitcher and catcher. Do you have any thoughts on the hardest position outside of that?
If it's not pitcher or catcher, I do think it'd be third base. Just like a
Yeah,
very hot corner.
actually,
Maybe
yes.
if you didn't have fast reaction time, it'd be very hard for you. Um,
Yes.
Very dangerous actually as well. 'Cause our
Yes.
and then if you have one of those coaches that are like, "Get in, she's gonna bump," but it's like this 6'3" girl, like massive, and you're just like, "Coach, she's not button," like,
Oh,
but you
Kelly.
still gotta move up.
Oh, Kelly. The first couple years of Duke softball, we had one of those, I would say, who was like I'm right now I'm like putting my hand in
"Get
front of my face,
in."
like, get in, watch the hands, watch the hands. I'm
Yeah,
like, she hit 18 home runs last year. If
for
they
real.
bunt, that's a good thing. That's a good thing for us. And then, oh my god, and then Duke's, especially Duke's Field, where and I had a oh god, you're hitting a nerve. Actually, I had a lot of disagreements about that, but Duke's Field gets really hard and like really
Yes.
inconsistent. Like some infields are like always kind of soft and like play like you can read the bounces. But as a third baseman, especially with Deanna at the plate who can drop a little bunt right in front of you, and all the coaches are like, get in. And then she can also, I don't know, smack one at your leg. Like last year when y'all were in preseason and I asked Coach Young, hey, can I come by and just like be around and, watch and get some
I
energy?
remember I know
You know what I'm talking
exactly
about?
what you're about to say.
So I think I've told the story on the show before, but I'm like, "Hey, can I come by? I just wanna, like, be around the language of softball before I call a game." She's like, "Sure, sure. Yeah, Jameson and DJ are coming. Do you mind, like" or no, I think I didn't think she told me. I said, "Yeah." She's like, "Yeah, sure, sure. I'm on the way there." And she's like, "Do you mind, like, subbing in? We're, like, a few people short because people are hurt." I was like, I'd prefer not to, honestly, but, like, Jay and DJ are playing, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, surely we'll be in the outfield." No. Third base, right here, and which I hated then. Jameson's at short, DJ's at second, and, yeah, and then the infield's hard as a rock, and, I haven't played in, I don't know, two years at that point, 3 years maybe. Tore my ACL last time I was on the field. So yeah, I wasn't feeling great. And then Deanna just kept hitting balls right by my face, and so did Anna. So don't miss that. Don't envy that. That is a hard position
No.
too. But okay,
Mhm.
point is, all the positions have their own kind of personalities, own difficulties,
Yes.
strengths, weaknesses. Pitching is hard, catching is hard. And to all the athletes out there, it's just hard. Especially being a college athlete, being any athlete at a high level, is a challenge. So I think that kind of rounds out the week or the show, I should say. Kelly, anything to add ahead of your weekend heading to Clearwater? Any message you got for the softball speakeasy fans?
FAU games were not streamed, but
Mm,
Clearwater games are, and I've been working
yes.
really hard on having very cute coaching outfits, so y'all better tune in, okay? Sometimes I come out on the field and catch them in warm-ups, but most of the time I'm in the bullpen or writing on my quab sheets, but check out the hot coach on the sidelines.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, everyone tune in and then tweet about the like catching
Who's
coach
the
for
hot new
Clemson.
Clemson coach? Like, I'm just waiting
Yeah.
to be a Twitter thread.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, good luck down in Clearwater. I'll be watching and rooting for you all. It should be a lot of fun. In fact, this weekend I'm joining a lot of other Duke alumni. We're running a half marathon, so wish me luck
Ooh.
because I
Yes,
don't want to do it,
you got
but
it.
we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. Thank you all so much for watching, listening, viewing, and subscribing. Thank you for your constant support. Please comment what you want from the show this year. Like, does this format work? Do you like that? Like, subscribe, share with your friends, rate us 5 stars. That means the world. Soft plug, hard plug. We don't have a sponsor. If you know anyone who wants to sponsor us, let us know. softballspeakeasy@gmail.com, or you can probably find my contact information or Kelly's. But without further ado, we will see you next week on the show.